In the courthouse hallway, my daughter-in-law walked past me and whispered, "It's all ours now. You're finished." I smiled. She hadn't seen the documents in my bag. But let me back up and tell you how we got here, because this story doesn't start in a courthouse. It starts 3 years ago at my son's wedding, when I first met the woman who would try to destroy everything my late husband and I had built. Her name was Vanessa. Beautiful, charming, well-spoken. She had my son Trevor completely wrapped around her finger from the moment they met. He was 32, she was 28, and according to him, she was the one. The woman he'd been waiting his whole life to find. I wanted to be happy for him, I really did. But something about Vanessa set off alarm bells in my head from day one. The way she looked at our family home during her first visit, not with admiration, but with calculation. The way she asked pointed questions about my late husband's business, about our properties, about our investments. The way she smiled just a little too sweetly when Trevor mentioned that I was the sole owner of everything since his father passed. "Your mother must be very wealthy," she said to Trevor one evening at dinner, her voice dripping with false casualness. "It must be nice knowing you'll inherit all of this someday." Trevor laughed it off. "Mom's gonna live forever. Besides, I don't think about stuff like that." But Vanessa did. I could see it in her eyes. My husband Marcus had died 2 years before Trevor met Vanessa. He left me everything: our home, his successful construction company, several rental properties, and a substantial investment portfolio. We'd built it all together over 30 years of marriage, and when he passed, he made sure I was taken care of. He also set up a trust for Trevor, but with specific conditions that wouldn't kick in until he turned 35, or got married, whichever came first. Marcus had been smart about money. He'd seen too many families torn apart by inheritance disputes, so he'd structured everything carefully with the help of our lawyer, Richard Chen. Richard had been our friend for 20 years, and he knew our family inside and out. "Make sure Trevor is settled before he gets access to serious money," Marcus had told Richard when they were drafting the documents. "Make sure he's with someone who loves him for him, not for what he'll inherit." At the time, it seemed like an overly cautious approach. But now, watching Vanessa circle my son like a shark, I understood my husband's wisdom. The wedding was beautiful. I won't lie about that. Vanessa had exquisite taste, and she spared no expense, mostly our expense, since Trevor and I ended up paying for most of it. She wanted the biggest venue, the most expensive flowers, the designer dress. Every time I gently suggested something more modest, she'd get tears in her eyes and say, "Don't you want your son's wedding to be special? Don't you want people to see how successful our family is?"
Our family. She was already claiming ownership. I wrote the checks because I loved my son and wanted him to be happy. But I also paid attention. I watched how Vanessa treated the wedding vendors when she thought no one important was looking, snapping at the florist, berating the caterer, dismissing the photographer's suggestions with contempt. I watched how she smiled for the cameras but complained constantly behind the scenes. And I watched how she looked at me during the reception, not with the warmth of a new daughter-in-law, but with barely concealed impatience, like I was an obstacle standing between her and something she wanted. After the wedding, Trevor and Vanessa moved into a condo that I helped them purchase. Well, if I'm being honest, I purchased it. Trevor's salary as a software engineer was good, but not downtown luxury condo good. Vanessa had insisted she needed to be in the heart of the city, close to her marketing job, in a building with a doorman and a gym and a rooftop terrace. "It's an investment, Mom," Trevor had said when he asked for my help with the down payment. "Real estate always appreciates. You'll get your money back eventually." Eventually. That word would come back to haunt us. I put down $200,000 for their condo. I told myself it was a wedding gift, a way to help them start their life together on solid ground. But I also made sure the deed was in Trevor's name only, not joint ownership, just his name. Vanessa noticed. "Why isn't my name on the deed?" she asked Trevor one evening when I was over for dinner. "Because Mom bought it. It's in my name, but we both live here. What's the difference?" "The difference is that I'm your wife," Vanessa said, her voice tight. "What's yours should be ours." "It is ours," Trevor insisted. "The deed is just paperwork." But Vanessa didn't see it that way. And from that moment on, I could feel her resentment toward me growing like a cancer. 6 months into their marriage, Vanessa started pushing for Trevor to ask me about his inheritance. "Your father left you money, right? When do you get access to it?" "When I turned 35. Or I already did, actually, since I got married. But I haven't really looked into the details." "You should look into the details," Vanessa pressed. "We could use that money. We could upgrade to a bigger place, invest in property, build real wealth." "We already have real wealth," I wanted to tell her. "The condo alone was worth more than most people save in a lifetime." But she wanted more. She always wanted more. Trevor, to his credit, wasn't particularly interested in the money. He loved his job, he was happy with their life, and he trusted that everything would work out. But Vanessa was relentless. She started researching estate planning, trust structures, inheritance law. She made appointments with financial advisors. She talked constantly about securing their future. And then 1 year into their marriage, she made her move. I was at home one evening when Trevor called. "Mom, can you come over? Vanessa and I need to talk to you about something important." The tone of his voice made my stomach drop. This wasn't a casual dinner invitation. This was serious. When I arrived at their condo, Vanessa had papers spread out all over the dining room table. Legal documents, financial statements, property assessments. She'd done her homework. "Mom, sit down," Trevor said, looking uncomfortable. Vanessa didn't waste time with pleasantries. "We've been looking into Trevor's trust fund, and we think there's been a mistake." "A mistake?" I asked carefully. "According to these documents, Trevor's father left him $2 million in trust, but there are conditions attached that seem unfair." She slid a paper across the table toward me. "It says here that Trevor can't access the full amount until he's 35, and even then, only with your approval. Why would his own father put you in control of his inheritance?" I looked at the document she'd pushed toward me. It was a copy of Marcus's trust agreement, a document that was supposed to be private, kept in Richard Chen's office. "Where did you get this?" "That's not important," Vanessa said quickly. "What's important is that this setup isn't fair to Trevor. He's a grown man. He's married. He should have full access to his own inheritance without needing his mother's permission." Trevor shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "Mom, I'm not saying I agree with everything Vanessa's saying, but she has a point. Why did Dad set it up this way?" I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "Your father set it up this way to protect you. He wanted to make sure you were settled and mature before you had access to that kind of money. He'd seen too many young people destroy their lives with sudden wealth." "Trevor is 33 years old," Vanessa interrupted. "He's hardly a child, and he's married to me. We can manage money responsibly." "I'm sure you can, but the trust was set up according to your father's wishes, Trevor. I'm just the executor. I don't control the terms." That was only partially true.
The trust did give me discretionary power over distributions, but Marcus had also left detailed instructions about when and how Trevor should receive his inheritance. Instructions that Vanessa clearly didn't know about. "We want to contest the trust," Vanessa said flatly. "We've spoken to a lawyer, and he says we have grounds to challenge the terms as overly restrictive." My heart sank. "You spoke to a lawyer? About challenging your father's wishes?" Trevor finally spoke up, his voice apologetic. "Mom, we're just exploring our options. We're not trying to disrespect Dad's memory, but Vanessa's right. I should have access to what's mine." "You will have access," I said firmly. "In 2 years, when you turn 35, just like your father intended." "2 years is a long time," Vanessa pressed. "We have opportunities now, investment opportunities that won't wait 2 years. We need that capital." "What opportunities?" I asked. "That's our business," Vanessa snapped, her mask of sweetness finally slipping. "The point is, it's Trevor's money, and we should be able to access it when we need it, not when you decide to give us permission." I stood up, gathering my purse. "I think this conversation is over. Trevor, when you want to talk about this calmly and rationally, without lawyers and ultimatums, call me. Until then, the trust stands as your father wrote it." As I walked toward the door, Vanessa called after me. "We're not going to just accept this, Diane. We have rights." I turned back to look at her. "So do I. And so did Marcus. Good night." I drove home with my hands shaking on the steering wheel. This was exactly what Marcus had feared. Someone coming into Trevor's life who cared more about money than about our son. I'd hoped I was wrong about Vanessa. I'd hoped she would prove me wrong. But now the mask was off, and I could see her clearly. The next morning, I called Richard Chen. "We need to talk. Vanessa has a copy of Marcus's trust documents, and she's threatening to contest them." Richard's voice was grave. "How did she get those documents? They're confidential." "I don't know, but she has them, and she's already spoken to a lawyer about challenging the trust." "Let her try," Richard said confidently. "Marcus's trust is ironclad. I drafted it myself, and I made sure every provision was legally sound. No judge is going to overturn a father's wishes just because his daughter-in-law wants early access to money." "But what if she convinces Trevor to fight me on this? What if she turns my son against me?" "Then you remind Trevor why his father set things up this way. You remind him that Marcus loved him and wanted to protect him. And you stand your ground, Diane. Don't let her bully you into going against your husband's wishes." I hung up feeling slightly better, but still anxious. I knew Vanessa wasn't going to let this go easily. I was right. Over the next few weeks, the campaign began. Vanessa started planting seeds of doubt in Trevor's mind, questioning my motives, suggesting I was holding on to his inheritance out of greed or control. She twisted every conversation, every decision Marcus had made, painting me as the villain in their story. Trevor started calling me less frequently. When we did talk, the conversations were strained and awkward. He'd ask questions about the trust that I knew came from Vanessa. "Why did Dad give you so much control? Don't you think I've proven I'm responsible? When are you going to release the funds?" I tried to stay patient, to explain Marcus's reasoning, to remind Trevor of his father's love. But I could feel my son slipping away, one conversation at a time. 3 months after that confrontation in their condo, I received a formal letter from an attorney representing Trevor and Vanessa. They were officially challenging the trust, claiming it was overly restrictive and not in the beneficiary's best interest. They wanted a judge to order immediate distribution of the full $2 million. I sat in Richard's office, reading the legal complaint with tears in my eyes. How did it come to this? How did my own son become convinced that I'm the enemy? He's not the enemy, Richard said gently. She is. And she's very good at manipulation. But we're going to fight this, Diane, and we're going to win. The legal battle lasted 6 months. 6 months of depositions, court filings, arguments, and heartache. 6 months of Trevor barely speaking to me, of Vanessa's triumphant smirks whenever we passed in the courthouse halls, of my son choosing his wife over his mother again and again. The judge finally ruled in my favor. Marcus's trust was upheld, and Trevor would have to wait until he turned 35 for full access to his inheritance. The judge's written opinion was scathing toward Vanessa's arguments, noting that a parent's right to structure their estate as they see fit is fundamental, and the court finds no evidence that the trust terms are anything other than prudent and protective. I should have felt victorious, but I just felt empty because I'd won the legal battle but lost my son. Vanessa was furious. I'll never forget the look on her face when the judge read his decision. Pure rage, barely contained. She grabbed Trevor's arm and stormed out of the courtroom without a word to me. That night, Trevor called. "Mom, I need some space. Vanessa is really upset, and I need to focus on my marriage right now." "Trevor, please don't shut me out. I only did what your father asked me to do." "I know, but it doesn't feel that way to Vanessa. She thinks you don't trust us, that you don't think we're capable of managing money. And honestly, Mom, I'm starting to wonder if she's right." "Your father trusted you," I said desperately. "That's why he left you that money. He just wanted you to be ready for it." "I'm ready now, but you and Dad decided I'm not. How was that trust?" The call ended badly, with both of us frustrated and hurt. And for the next year, I barely heard from my son. Birthday cards went unanswered, Christmas invitations were declined, Mother's Day passed without a call. Vanessa had won, after all. Maybe not legally, but in every way that mattered. She had taken my son from me. For 14 months, I lived with the hole in my heart where my son used to be. I'd drive past their condo building sometimes, just hoping to catch a glimpse of Trevor. I'd check his social media, looking for signs that he was okay, that he was happy. Mostly, I just saw pictures that Vanessa posted. Carefully curated images of their perfect life, expensive dinners, weekend getaways, designer purchases. I wondered where the money was coming from. Trevor made a good salary, but not luxury lifestyle good, and I knew they didn't have access to his trust fund. So how were they affording all of this? My answer came from an unexpected source. One afternoon, I ran into Trevor's best friend, Marcus Jr. We'd named him after my late husband, and he'd been like a second son to me. He worked at the same tech company as Trevor, and he looked uncomfortable when he saw me at the grocery store. "Mrs. Carter," he said, shifting his weight from foot to foot. "How are you?" "I've been better, MJ. How's Trevor? I haven't talked to him in months." MJ's expression darkened. He's okay, I guess. But, Mrs. Carter, I'm worried about him. Can we talk somewhere private?" We ended up at a coffee shop, and what MJ told me made my blood run cold. "Vanessa has Trevor taking out loans," MJ said quietly. "Big loans. She convinced him to refinance the condo and pull out all the equity. Then she had him take out personal loans, credit cards, lines of credit. She's telling him it's for investments, but Mrs. Carter, I've seen some of the paperwork. There are no investments. The money is just disappearing." "How much are we talking about?" "From what Trevor's told me, they're over $300,000 in debt now, and Vanessa keeps pushing for more. She's been on him about taking out loans against his future inheritance. using the trust as collateral somehow. That's not possible, I said firmly. The trust is protected. No one can borrow against it. I told Trevor that, but Vanessa keeps saying her lawyer found a loophole that they can access the money early if they structure it right. Trevor doesn't understand all the legal stuff, so he's just trusting her. I felt sick. Is he okay? Is she treating him well? MJ hesitated, and that hesitation told me everything I needed to know. She's controlling, Mrs. Carter, really controlling. She monitors his phone, his emails, his bank accounts. She gets angry if he talks to me or his other friends. And she's constantly pushing him to ask you for money, telling him that you're being cruel by withholding his inheritance. I need to talk to him, I said desperately. I need to make him understand what's happening. He won't listen, MJ said sadly. I've tried. His other friends have tried. She's got him convinced that everyone who questions her is just jealous or controlling. She's isolated him, Mrs. Carter, completely isolated him. I thanked MJ for telling me and left the coffee shop in a daze. My son was in financial trouble, possibly in an emotionally abusive relationship, and there was nothing I could do about it. If I reached out, Vanessa would spin it as me trying to interfere. If I stayed silent, Trevor would spiral deeper into debt and dysfunction.
I called Richard Chen again. We have a problem, a big problem. I told him everything MJ had shared. Richard listened carefully, taking notes. This is concerning, Diane, very concerning. But legally, Trevor is an adult. If he's choosing to take out loans, even bad ones, there's not much we can do to stop him. What about the trust? Can she really find a way to access it early? Not through any legitimate means. The trust is airtight. But Richard paused. There are predatory lenders who specialize in inheritance advances. They offer loans against future inheritances at extremely high interest rates. If Vanessa has found one of those companies, they might have convinced Trevor to sign something. How is that legal? Barely. It operates in a gray area. But if Trevor signed a contract giving them rights to his inheritance when he receives it, they could make a claim. It wouldn't hold up in court, but it could create a massive legal mess. Check into it, I said. Find out if Trevor has signed anything with one of these companies. Richard did some digging, and what he found was worse than I'd imagined. Trevor had signed contracts with not one, but two inheritance advance companies. Between them, he'd received about $150,000 in cash. But the contract stipulated that when he received his trust fund, these companies would be entitled to $600,000 combined, 4 times what they'd given him. These contracts are predatory and probably unenforceable, Richard explained. But they're going to fight, and the process of fighting them could tie up Trevor's inheritance for years. Vanessa did this, I said, my voice shaking with anger. She's orchestrated this whole thing. She's bleeding him dry. Probably, but proving it is another matter. These contracts have Trevor's signature on them. He's legally responsible. I felt helpless and furious. My son was being destroyed financially and emotionally, and I couldn't stop it. Every attempt I made to help would be seen as interference, would push him further into Vanessa's control. So I did the only thing I could do. I waited, and I watched, and I documented everything. I hired a private investigator, not to spy on Trevor, but to understand where the money was going. What we found shocked even me. Vanessa had a gambling problem, a serious one. She was going to casinos 3 or 4 times a week, dropping thousands of dollars at poker tables and slot machines. The investment opportunities she'd been telling Trevor about didn't exist. The money was going straight into casino coffers. She also had another secret. She was still legally married to her first husband. The divorce she'd told Trevor was finalized never happened. She filed papers but never completed the process, which meant her marriage to Trevor wasn't even legal.
I sat in the private investigator's office looking at the evidence spread across the desk. Casino surveillance photos, financial records, divorce filing documents that showed case dismissed for failure to proceed. "What do I do with this?" I asked. The investigator, a former police detective named Sarah Martinez, looked at me seriously. "That depends. Do you want to save your son, or do you want to protect yourself? What's the difference? If you take this to Trevor now, he might not believe you. She's got him so twisted up that he'll think you fabricated it. He might cut you off completely. But if you wait, document more, and let him discover the truth himself, you might have a chance." "And protecting myself?" "Use this information to protect the trust. Make sure that when this marriage implodes, and it will, she can't claim any rights to the inheritance. Because if she's still married to someone else, her marriage to Trevor is invalid, which means she has zero legal claim to anything." I chose to wait. It was the hardest decision I'd ever made, watching my son suffer while I held evidence that could free him. But Sarah was right. If I showed him this information now, he wouldn't believe me. He'd think I was so desperate to break them up that I'd fabricated evidence. Vanessa had poisoned him against me too thoroughly. So I waited, and I watched, and I kept gathering evidence. 3 months later, Trevor called me. It was 2 a.m., and his voice was shaking. "Mom, can I come over?" "Of course. Are you okay?" No, I'm not okay. I'll be there in 20 minutes. When he arrived, he looked terrible. Unshaven, exhausted, his eyes red from crying. He collapsed onto my couch and put his head in his hands. "I think Vanessa is lying to me," he said quietly. "About everything." My heart was pounding, but I kept my voice calm. "What happened?" "I came home early from a work trip tonight. She wasn't expecting me until tomorrow, and she wasn't home. So I waited, and when she finally came back at midnight, she had casino chips in her purse. Thousands of dollars worth." I stayed silent, letting him talk. "I confronted her about it, and she lied right to my face, said a friend had given them to her to hold. But I know that's not true. So I started looking through our financial records, Mom. Really looking at them." His voice broke. "We're drowning in debt. Over $400,000 now. And I don't know where any of the money went. She said it was for investments, but there are no investments. It's just gone." "Oh, Trevor," I said softly, moving to sit beside him. "I don't know. I love her, Mom. At least, I thought I did. But I don't even know who she is anymore. Maybe I never did." This was the moment. I could tell him everything about the gambling, the fake divorce, the financial fraud. But something held me back. He needed to discover this on his own, or he'd always wonder if I'd manipulated him. "Trevor, I think you need to talk to a lawyer. Not about the trust, about your marriage and your finances. You need someone to help you understand what's really happening. Will you help me find someone?" "Of course. I'll call Richard tomorrow. He'll recommend someone good." Trevor stayed on my couch that night. The next morning, I made him breakfast, just like when he was a kid, and we talked about everything except Vanessa. It felt like having my son back, even if just for a moment. Richard recommended a family law attorney named Patricia Okonkwo, who specialized in complex divorce cases. Trevor met with her that week, and what she uncovered during their initial consultation shocked him to his core. Patricia called me afterward, with Trevor's permission. "Mrs. Carter, I need to ask you something. Did you know that Vanessa's marriage to Trevor might not be legal?" I had heard something about that," I admitted carefully. "Why?" "Because I ran a standard background check and there's an active marriage license in Nevada under her name. to a man named Derek Paulson. The marriage license is dated 2019, and there's no record of a divorce being finalized. Does Trevor know? I just told him. He's in my office right now, and he's devastated. But Mrs. Carter, there's more, much more. Over the next hour, Patricia laid out everything she'd discovered in just 1 week of investigation. The bigamy, the gambling, the fraudulent loan applications where Vanessa had forged Trevor's signature, the credit cards she'd opened in his name without his knowledge, the inheritance advance companies that were now circling, waiting for their massive payday. Your son is a victim of financial abuse, Patricia said bluntly, and possibly criminal fraud. The question is, what does he want to do about it? Trevor decided to confront Vanessa with everything he knew. Patricia advised against it. Never show your cards before you're ready to play them. But Trevor insisted. He needed to hear it from her own mouth. I wasn't there for the confrontation, but Trevor told me about it afterward. Vanessa denied everything at first, then got angry, then tried to turn it around on him. She claimed he was overreacting, that the marriage thing was just a paperwork mistake, that the gambling was under control, that the loans were his idea. She said, "You put me up to this," Trevor told me, his voice hollow. She said, "You hired investigators to dig up dirt on her because you've always hated her. She said, you're trying to destroy our marriage so you can control me and my inheritance." Do you believe her? He was quiet for a long moment. No, not anymore. I want to, Mom. Part of me still wants to believe that this is all a misunderstanding, that we can work through it. But I can't ignore the evidence. I can't ignore what Patricia found. And I can't ignore how I feel when I'm around Vanessa anymore. Like I'm walking on eggshells. Like nothing I do is ever good enough. What are you going to do? Patricia says I should file for an annulment based on the bigamy, that it'll be faster and cleaner than a divorce, and that I should report the financial fraud to the police. Are you going to? I don't know. She's still my wife, Mom, even if the marriage isn't legal. I don't want to send her to jail. That's who my son was. Kind, forgiving, always seeing the best in people. Even people who had used him, lied to him, and nearly destroyed him financially. Whatever you decide, I said gently, I support you, and I love you. That never changed even when we weren't speaking. I know. And I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry for shutting you out, for believing her lies about you, for fighting you over the trust. Dad set it up that way for a reason, didn't he? He knew something like this could happen. Your father loved you. He wanted to protect you. That's all I've ever wanted too. Trevor filed for annulment the following week. Vanessa responded by going on the offensive. She filed a counterclaim, alleging that Trevor had been emotionally abusive, that I had manipulated him against her, and that she was entitled to half of everything, including rights to his future inheritance. This is absurd, Rickard assured us. It'll get thrown out. But it didn't get thrown out. Not right away. The judge allowed it to proceed to discovery, which meant Vanessa's lawyers could demand financial records, depositions, and documentation of everything. And that's when things got really dangerous.
Vanessa's lawsuit was a nightmare. Her lawyers, expensive ones she somehow managed to hire despite being broke, filed motion after motion, demanding access to my financial records, Trevor's medical history, even my late husband's estate planning documents. They wanted to prove that I had systematically undermined Vanessa's marriage from day one. The depositions were brutal. Vanessa's lead attorney, a shark named Mitchell Brennan, twisted every answer I gave. When I said I'd helped with the condo down payment, he made it sound like I was buying control over Trevor. When I explained Marcus's trust structure, he made it sound like I was hoarding Trevor's inheritance out of spite.
Isn't it true, Mrs. Carter, that you never approved of your son's wife? I had concerns, I admitted carefully, but I wanted to give her a chance. Concerns about what, exactly? Her background? Her race? Her social status? Objection, Richard interrupted. Irrelevant and inflammatory. But the damage was done. Brennan was trying to paint me as a controlling, prejudiced mother-in-law who had sabotaged her son's marriage because she didn't think Vanessa was good enough. The media picked up the story. Wealthy mothers sued by daughter-in-law in bitter inheritance battle, read one headline. I started getting hate mail from strangers who knew nothing about the situation, but were convinced I was a monster based on Vanessa's carefully crafted narrative. Trevor was caught in the middle, being deposed by both sides. I could see the toll it was taking on him, the stress, the guilt, the exhaustion of having to relive every moment of his marriage and explain how he'd been deceived. Vanessa, meanwhile, played the victim perfectly. She gave interviews to local news stations, crying about how she'd married into a wealthy family only to be rejected and destroyed by a jealous mother-in-law. She conveniently left out the bigamy, the gambling, and the fraud. We need to fight fire with fire, Richard told me, after a particularly brutal court hearing. We need to expose what she really is. The bigamy alone would destroy her credibility. But that would destroy Trevor too, I said. Everyone would know he was duped, that his marriage was a fraud. He's already humiliated. I won't make it worse. Diane, she's trying to take everything from you. Your reputation, your assets, your relationship with your son. If you don't fight back now, you might lose it all. Then I lose it all. But I won't sacrifice my son's dignity to win a legal battle. Richard looked at me with frustration and respect. You're a better person than she deserves. But the universe has a way of delivering justice, sometimes when you least expect it. 3 weeks before our trial date, I got a call from an unknown number, a woman's voice, nervous and uncertain. Is this Diane Carter? Yes. Who is this? My name is Rachel Paulson. I think you need to know something about Vanessa. My heart started racing. I'm listening. She's still married to my brother, Derek. They got married 5 years ago in Las Vegas, and she left him after 8 months, took his savings, and disappeared. He's been looking for her ever since, trying to get a divorce, but he can't find her to serve papers. Does Derek know where she is now? He does now. I saw the news coverage of your lawsuit. I recognized her immediately. I called Derek, and he's been trying to reach her lawyers, but they won't return her calls. Would Derek be willing to testify, to provide documentation of their marriage? He'd do anything to finally end this. She ruined his life, Mrs. Carter, destroyed his credit, stole from his family, left him with nothing. When I saw her on TV playing the victim, it made me sick.
Vanessa had a pattern. Derek was her second husband, not her first. She'd been married twice before, each time targeting men with money or assets, bleeding them dry and disappearing before the legal consequences caught up with her. She changed her name slightly with each marriage, making it harder to trace her history. She's a con artist, Richard said, looking at the documentation Derek had provided. A professional one. This isn't someone who made mistakes or has a gambling problem. This is someone who systematically targets and destroys people for profit. We need to tell Trevor, I said. We will, but first, we need to tell the judge. Richard filed an emergency motion, attaching all the evidence we'd gathered, Derek's marriage certificate, financial records from her previous victims, casino surveillance footage, forged loan applications, everything. The judge ordered an immediate hearing. Vanessa's lawyers tried to block it, claiming the evidence was obtained improperly, but the judge wasn't having it. If these allegations are true, Judge Williams said sternly, then this entire lawsuit is based on fraud. We're going to get to the bottom of this, now. The hearing was set for 2 weeks later. In the meantime, Richard filed a counter lawsuit against Vanessa for fraud,
identity theft, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. We were going on the offensive. Vanessa must have known the walls were closing in because that's when she made her most desperate move. She tried to access Trevor's trust fund directly. I got an urgent call from Richard's office. "Diane, someone just filed paperwork with the probate court claiming to be Trevor's legal spouse and demanding immediate distribution of his trust fund. The paperwork has Vanessa's signature, but also what appears to be Trevor's signature authorizing the request." "Trevor would never sign that," I said immediately. "I know, which means she either forged it or she coerced him into signing it without understanding what it was." I called Trevor immediately. "Did you sign any paperwork for Vanessa recently?" "No. Why? Mom, what's going on?" "Someone filed a claim against your trust fund. The paperwork has your signature on it." There was silence, then a sharp intake of breath. Oh God. Last week she asked me to sign some refinancing documents for the condo. She said it was routine paperwork to lower our interest rate. I didn't read it carefully. I trusted her. "Do you still have copies?" "I might. Let me look." Trevor found the documents in his email. Richard had them analyzed by a forensic document expert, and the verdict was damning. The papers Trevor had signed were legitimate refinancing documents, but Vanessa had added additional pages afterward. Pages that included a power of attorney giving her authority to act on Trevor's behalf regarding his inheritance. "This is fraud," the expert confirmed. "She used a legitimate transaction as cover to get his signature, then added fraudulent pages to the document." We filed criminal charges. Not just civil claims, but actual criminal fraud charges. The district attorney's office reviewed the evidence and agreed to prosecute. The day the police showed up at Vanessa's door with an arrest warrant, she ran. She withdrew the last $8,000 from a joint account she shared with Trevor, packed 2 suitcases, and disappeared. The police put out a warrant, but she'd vanished. For 3 days, no one knew where she was. Trevor was devastated. Not because he wanted her back, but because he never imagined she was capable of something like this. And then she resurfaced at the probate court with her own lawyer, ready to make one final play for Trevor's inheritance. That's when I got the call to come to the courthouse. That's when Vanessa walked past me in the hallway and whispered, "It's all ours now. You're finished." And that's when I smiled, because she hadn't seen the documents in my bag. The courtroom was packed. Vanessa's lawsuit against me, Trevor's annulment case, the probate claim on the trust fund, and now the criminal fraud charges. Judge Williams had consolidated everything into one hearing to sort out the mess once and for all. Vanessa sat at the plaintiff's table with her new lawyer, a sleazy-looking man named Gregory Foster, who specialized in what Richard called Hail Mary cases. She was dressed impeccably, a conservative navy suit, minimal jewelry, her hair pulled back in a neat bun. She looked like a wounded victim, not a con artist on the run. Trevor sat behind Richard and me, his face pale and drawn. He hadn't slept in days. The woman he'd loved, the woman he'd married and defended and nearly lost his mother for, was about to be exposed for what she really was. And part of him, I could see it in his eyes, still didn't want to believe it. Judge Williams entered and we all stood. He was an older black man with silver hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. He'd been on the bench for 30 years, and Richard had told me he had zero tolerance for fraud. "This is quite a tangled web we have here," Judge Williams began, looking over his reading glasses at the assembled parties. "I've reviewed all the filings, and I have some serious concerns about what I'm seeing. Miss Foster, your client has some explaining to do." Gregory Foster stood, all fake confidence and bravado. "Your Honor, my client is the victim here. She entered into a marriage in good faith, only to be systematically destroyed by her mother-in-law's interference." "Save it," Judge Williams interrupted.
I've read the evidence submitted by Mrs. Carter's counsel. Your client is currently wanted on a warrant for fraud. She fled jurisdiction. She attempted to fraudulently access a trust fund using forged documents. So let's dispense with the victim narrative and get to the truth. Vanessa's face flushed, but she kept her composure. I'll hear testimony from Mr. Trevor Carter first. I want to understand exactly what happened in this marriage. Trevor took the stand, was sworn in, and Richard began his examination gently. Trevor explained how they'd met, how quickly things had moved, how in love he thought he was. He described the financial pressure, the constant demands for money, the isolation from friends and family. When did you first suspect something was wrong? Richard asked. When I found the casino chips in her purse. She'd been telling me for over a year that our money was going into investments, but there were no investments, just debt, mountains of debt. Did you authorize your wife to take out loans in your name? No, I signed some documents, but she told me they were for refinancing the condo. I never agreed to personal loans or credit cards. Did you authorize her to access your trust fund? Absolutely not. I didn't even know she'd filed paperwork until my mother called me. Vanessa's lawyer tried to cross-examine Trevor, but Trevor held firm. He wasn't angry or vindictive, just sad and honest. And that honesty was devastating to Vanessa's case. Next, Richard called Derek Paulson to the stand. Derek was a quiet man in his 40s, wearing a simple button-down shirt and looking uncomfortable in the courtroom. But his testimony was explosive. Tell the court about your relationship with the defendant, Richard prompted. We got married in Las Vegas in 2019. I thought she was the love of my life. We'd been dating for 6 months, and she was everything I'd ever wanted. Smart, beautiful, attentive. What happened after you married? She convinced me to give her access to my accounts, said she wanted to help manage our finances. Within 3 months, she drained my savings about $85,000. She took out credit cards in my name, forged my signature on loan applications, sold my car without permission. When I confronted her, she disappeared. I came home from work one day and she was just gone. Did you ever divorce her? I tried. I filed papers, but I couldn't locate her to serve them. The case was dismissed for lack of service. As far as I know, we're still legally married. Vanessa's lawyer tried to object repeatedly during Derek's testimony, but the judge overruled him each time. The evidence was too solid. Marriage certificate, financial records, and police reports Derek had filed when Vanessa disappeared. Then Richard called his bombshell witness, Marcus Jr., Trevor's best friend. Marcus, you've known Trevor for how long? Since college, about 15 years.
Tell the court what you observed during his marriage to Miss Morrison. MJ glanced at Trevor apologetically, then began. She isolated him, systematically cut him off from everyone who cared about him. She monitored his phone, his emails, his social media. She got angry if he spent time with friends or his mother. She controlled every aspect of his life. Did she ever discuss money with you? All the time. She was obsessed with Trevor's inheritance. She'd ask me if I knew how much it was worth, when he'd get access to it, whether there were ways to get it early. She wasn't subtle about it. Did you ever see her at a casino? MJ hesitated. Yes, twice. I was at the Riverside Casino for a bachelor party, and I saw her at the poker tables. She was betting hundreds of dollars a hand. The second time she saw me and practically ran out of there. The next day, she told Trevor I was lying, that I was trying to break them up. By the time MJ stepped down, Vanessa's lawyer looked deflated. But Vanessa herself still had that defiant look in her eyes. She thought she had one more card to play. Judge Williams called a brief recess, and in the hallway, that's when Vanessa made her move. She walked past me, close enough to whisper, her voice dripping with false confidence. It's all ours now.
"You're finished," she hissed. I smiled, because what Vanessa didn't know was that in my bag, I had the documents that would end this once and for all. When court resumed, Richard stood. "Your Honor, I'd like to introduce new evidence that came to light just this morning." He handed the judge a thick folder. Inside were documents that Sarah Martinez, my private investigator, had obtained through legal channels just hours before. Marriage certificates. Not just from Derek Paulson, but from 2 previous marriages. One to a man named Robert Chen in 2014, another to James Rodriguez in 2016. Neither marriage had been properly dissolved before Vanessa moved on to her next victim. "Your Honor," Richard said, his voice ringing through the courtroom, "the defendant isn't just guilty of bigamy with Mr. Paulson. She's a serial marriage fraudster. She's been running the scheme for over a decade, targeting men with assets, draining them financially, and disappearing before the legal system catches up with her." There was an audible gasp in the courtroom. Vanessa's face went white. "We have testimony from Mr. Chen and Mr. Rodriguez, both willing to testify to similar patterns of financial abuse. We have documentation of fraud in multiple states, and we have proof that the defendant has used at least 4 different variations of her name to avoid detection." Judge Williams looked at Vanessa with barely concealed disgust. "Miss Morrison, or whatever your real name is, do you have anything to say for yourself?" Vanessa's lawyer was frantically whispering to her, but she ignored him. She stood up, and for a moment, the mask of victimhood slipped completely. "You people have no idea what it's like," she said, her voice cold, "to have nothing, to watch wealthy people waste their money while the rest of us struggle. I took what I deserved, what we all deserve." "You took what didn't belong to you," Judge Williams said firmly, "through fraud, forgery, and manipulation. That's called theft, Miss Morrison, and it's a crime." He banged his gavel. "I'm ruling as follows. The lawsuit against Mrs. Diane Carter is dismissed with prejudice and ruled frivolous. Mrs. Carter is entitled to attorney's fees. The marriage between Miss Morrison and Mr. Trevor Carter is declared void ab initio due to the defendant's existing marriage to Mr. Derek Paulson. Miss Morrison has no claim to any marital property or to Mr. Carter's trust fund. And finally, I'm ordering the defendant remanded into custody pending criminal trial on multiple counts of fraud, identity theft, and forgery." 2 bailiffs moved toward Vanessa. She looked around wildly, as if considering making a run for it, but there was nowhere to go. As the bailiffs handcuffed Vanessa and led her out of the courtroom, she looked back at Trevor one last time. Not with remorse or sadness, but with pure rage, like she was furious that her con had finally been exposed, that her victim had escaped. Trevor didn't look away. He met her eyes and said quietly, "I forgive you, but I never want to see you again." It was the most powerful thing I'd ever heard my son say. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed us with cameras and microphones, shouting questions. Richard handled them expertly, giving a brief statement about justice being served, while I guided Trevor to my car. He was shaking, adrenaline and relief and trauma all hitting him at once. "It's over," he kept saying as we drove away. "It's really over." "It's over," I confirmed, reaching over to squeeze his hand. But the truth was, it wasn't quite over. There was still healing to be done, still damage to repair, still a mountain of debt to sort through and a life to rebuild. We started that same week. Richard connected Trevor with a bankruptcy attorney who specialized in fraud cases. Because Trevor hadn't knowingly participated in Vanessa's schemes, and because we could prove the loans were fraudulent,
Most of his debt was eventually discharged. The inheritance advance companies tried to fight, but once they saw the criminal fraud charges, they quietly withdrew their claims. The condo had to be sold. Too many bad memories, and Trevor couldn't afford the mortgage on his own anyway. But the sale paid off what legitimate debt remained, and Trevor walked away clean. Financially, at least. The emotional healing took longer. Trevor moved back in with me for 6 months while he got his life together. Those months were precious. We talked, really talked, about everything that had happened. About the red flags he'd ignored, about the isolation and control he had experienced, about how easy it is to lose yourself when someone is systematically breaking you down. "I was so stupid," he said one night over dinner. "How did I not see what she was doing?" "You weren't stupid. You were in love, and she was very, very good at what she did." I reached across the table and took his hand. "This wasn't your fault, Trevor. She's a professional con artist. She's been doing this for years. You're not the first person she fooled, and if she hadn't been caught, you wouldn't have been the last. But I pushed you away. I chose her over you. I said terrible things to you. You were being manipulated. I knew that, even when it hurt. And I never stopped loving you, not for 1 second." Trevor's eyes filled with tears. "I don't deserve you as a mother." "Yes, you do. You deserve all the love in the world. That's what your father wanted for you. That's what I want for you. And someday you'll find someone who deserves you. Someone real, someone honest, someone who loves you for who you are, not for what you have." "I don't think I'm ready for that yet," he said with a sad smile. "You're not, and that's okay. Heal first. The rest will come when it's supposed to." Trevor started therapy, working through the trauma of what he'd experienced. His therapist diagnosed him with post-traumatic stress from the financial and emotional abuse. It helped Trevor understand that what had happened to him was serious, that it wasn't just a bad relationship, but actual abuse. He also started rebuilding his friendships. MJ was the first person he reached out to, apologizing for the years of distance Vanessa had created. MJ forgave him immediately, and soon Trevor's other friends followed. They rallied around him, supporting him, helping him remember who he was before Vanessa. As for Vanessa herself, justice moved slowly but surely. She was denied bail after the prosecution argued, successfully, that she was a flight risk with a history of skipping jurisdictions. She sat in county jail for 7 months waiting for trial. When the trial finally came, it lasted only 3 days. The evidence was overwhelming. Robert Chen testified, James Rodriguez testified, Derek Paulson testified, Trevor testified. The prosecutor laid out a pattern of fraud spanning a decade, targeting at least 7 men that they could document, stealing over $800,000 in total. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours, guilty on all counts. Vanessa was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison and ordered to pay restitution to all her victims. She'd be 52 years old by the time she got out, if she served her full sentence. "Do you feel like justice was served?" a reporter asked me outside the courthouse after the sentencing. I thought about it carefully before answering. Justice was served in the legal sense, but the real justice is that my son is free. He's healing. He has his life back. That's what matters most to me. Trevor turned 35 6 months after Vanessa's conviction. Under the terms of his father's trust, he now had full access to his inheritance. We sat in Richard's office as Richard explained the financial position. "After legal fees and expenses, the trust is worth approximately $1.8 million, Richard explained.
Your father's investments performed well over the years. This is yours, Trevor. No conditions, no restrictions. What would you like to do with it?" Trevor was quiet for a long moment. Then he looked at me. "I want to set up a foundation to help other victims of financial fraud and domestic abuse. People like me who got conned and lost everything. I want to use this money to help them rebuild." My eyes filled with tears. "Your father would be so proud of you." "And I want to pay you back," Trevor continued, "for the condo down payment, for the legal fees, for everything you spent protecting me when I was too blind to protect myself." "Trevor, you don't have to." "Yes, I do. Not because I owe you, but because it's right. You used your resources to save me. Now I want to make sure you're taken care of too." We compromised. Trevor paid back the condo down payment and split the legal fees with me. The rest he put into the foundation, which he named the Marcus Carter Foundation for Fraud Victims, after his father. Within a year, the foundation was helping dozens of people, providing legal assistance, financial counseling, and emotional support to people who had been victimized by con artists like Vanessa. Trevor threw himself into the work, and I watched him transform from a broken, traumatized man into someone with purpose and strength. He also started dating again, very carefully and slowly. He met a woman named Keisha at a support group for abuse survivors. She'd been through her own nightmare with a controlling ex-husband, and she understood Trevor's trauma in a way few people could. Their relationship built slowly, based on honesty and mutual respect and real love. When Trevor brought Keisha to meet me for the first time, I could see the difference immediately. The way she looked at him with genuine warmth, not calculation. The way she asked about his day and actually listened to the answer. The way she included me in conversations naturally, without any hidden agenda. "Your mom is amazing," Keisha told Trevor over dinner that night. "You're so lucky to have her." "I know," Trevor smiled at me. "I forgot that for a while, but I'll never forget it again." 2 years after Vanessa's conviction, Trevor and Keisha got married. It was a small ceremony, just close friends and family, nothing extravagant or showy, simple and real and full of love. I watched my son promise to love and cherish Keisha, and I saw in his eyes that he meant every word, not because he was being manipulated or controlled, but because he'd found someone worthy of those promises. During the reception, Trevor stood up to make a toast. "I want to thank everyone for being here today, but especially I want to thank my mom." He looked at me with tears in his eyes. "Mom, you saved my life. You stood by me when I didn't deserve it. You protected me when I wouldn't protect myself. You loved me even when you pushed me away. Everything good in my life right now exists because you never gave up on me. I love you." The room erupted in applause, and I couldn't stop crying. Happy tears this time, healing tears. After the reception, as I was getting ready to leave, I found a card on my windshield. It was from Trevor, and inside was a photo. Me and him when he was 5 years old, sitting on his father's lap, all of us laughing at something long forgotten. Under the photo, Trevor had written, "Thank you for showing me what real love looks like. Thank you for teaching me that family isn't about money or control or conditions. It's about showing up, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. I hope I can be half the parent you and Dad were to me. I love you forever. Trevor." I sat in my car and cried, holding that card against my chest. Because this moment, this peace, this knowledge that my son was truly happy and free, this was worth everything we had been through. Vanessa tried to take everything from us. She almost succeeded. But in the end, she couldn't take the one thing that mattered most: our family, our love, our bond. And that, more than any courtroom victory, was the real triumph.